Hello, this week we're going to be starting a dialogue system. By the end of this part we'll have a monologue system using blueprints. Start off by right clicking and adding a blueprint structure. We're going to call this s_conversations. It'll only have one thing inside of it, and there'll be a string called conversations, and this should be set to an array. Next, let's make an interface with an interact function. It'll need a reference to our player character. Then we're going to need a widget, call it HUD. Inside that, we're going to need a canvas panel and a size box anchored to the bottom middle. Its position in the X and Y should be set to 0, and then its offset should be 0.5 and 1. And then you can make this to a size that you're happy with. Then just add a text box to this. Make sure that your size box is set to a variable. And that it is set to collapsed. Moving into the event graph, we can create a function called showCombo. In here, we can set our conversation box to be visible, and we can also get our player controller and set the input mode to UI, as well as setting the show mouse cursor to true. And then we can make a hide convo function. And in here we're going to set the box to collapsed. We're going to put our input mode back to game mode. And then we're going to set our show mouse cursor back to false. Next we can create a reference to a player character, making sure that this is instance editable and exposed on spawn. Next we're going to need a variable called current conversation. It'll be set to the structure that we made earlier. And lastly for now is a conversation index of the type integer. Now let's make a binding for the text here. We'll have to get our current conversation. Break it and then get a copy. Using our conversation index, we can run the index into the return value here. Now we're going to have to overwrite the function on mouse down. Then we need to get the current conversation, break it, and get the last index, and see if our conversation index is greater than or equal to that. If it is, set the conversation index to 0 and then hide the conversation and return handle. If it's not, then increase the index by 1 and also return handled. Then in our third person character, we can add our HUD by creating a widget of the type HUD and then adding it to our viewport. Send a self-reference into our player character pin. After we have that, we're going to add a collision box to our character, and on event begin overlap, we're going to promote the overlapping actor to a variable, calling it overlapping actor. Now I'm going to add a new input action, calling it interact. We don't need to change any settings in it. And then over in our input mapping context, we're going to add the new action and set it to our E key. With that done, we can now call the interact event in our player character. And off the overlapping actor, we can call our interface's interact message. And setting our player character to self. We also want to set our overlapping actor to nothing when overlapping ends. So we're going to need someone to talk to. For that, we can duplicate our player, rename it, and I'll move mine into another folder just to keep things together. Open it up and clear out the event graph. I'll remove a few other things that we're not going to need. Then under class settings, we're going to need to implement an interface. This will be our blueprint interface interaction. Then we can drop our friend into the world. And I'll swap it to Manny since I haven't been using him a lot, so let's give him some love as well. Then we can call the interact event from the interface. And create a new variable called conversation list. This will be set to the structure that we made at the start, but it will need to be an array. Also, we'll need an integer called current conversation. Now off the interactions player pin, we can get the HUD and we can set our current conversation. To get that result, we're going to need to bring in our conversation list and get from that at our current conversation and pipe that in. Then we can call showConvo. Then we can get our conversation list and find its last index and see if it's equal to the current conversation. And if it is, we do nothing. But if it's not, we're going to incrementally increase it by 1. Don't forget to make the conversation list instance editable and exposed on spawn. Now I'm just going to add a few conversation and we can see that working. And with that, we can call this done. And if you like this sort of thing, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe.